Do you think you're one grade away from passing or hitting that grade 7? Well, you might be closer than you think. Now in this video, I'm breaking down the 2025 GCSE grade boundaries so you know exactly how many marks you need for a grade 4 or even a grade 7 to 9. Whether you're aiming to pass or you're pushing for top grades, this could be something useful for you to know. For those of you who are new to the channel, hi, I'm Varjod. I'm the founder of Mobile Tutors, and every year we help thousands of students increase their GCSE and A-level grades. I scored 98% in most of my GCSE and A-levels, and I hold a first-class degree from the London School of Economics in Business, Maths and Statistics. So let's get into it. So first, what are grade boundaries? Now every year the exam board sets how many marks you need to achieve each grade. Now this will depend on how hard the paper was and how students perform nationally. So what this means is that if students found the exam difficult, the exam board could lower the grade boundaries to make it slightly easier to achieve certain grades. And on the flip side, if the exam was easy and a lot of students got high marks, then the grade boundaries could be increased to make it slightly harder to achieve those grades. So in this video, I've averaged the June 2023 and June 2024 grade boundaries for a prediction for what the 2025 grade boundaries could look like. However, it's important to know that every year the grade boundaries change, so this is an estimate, but it's the best estimate that we can do. So for the 2025 prediction, we're going to average last year's grade boundary along with the year before that. So June 2023 and June 2024 will average to give us a prediction for 2025 grade boundaries. Of course, it can change every year, and this is just an estimate. So let's start with maths, one of the most common and most searched for subjects when it comes to grade boundaries. Now, it's important to know that for maths GCSE, there's 3 papers. Each paper is 80 marks, so in total, there's 240 marks that you can achieve. Now this is for all of the major exam boards like AQA, Edexcel and OCR. So for the maths boundary, I'm going to base it off Edexcel exam board because Edexcel is one of the most common exam boards, but let me show you how to calculate it so you can do it for your exam board if it's different. So what I want you to do is get the grade boundaries open for June 2023 and June 2024. Now as we can see, for June 2023, the grade boundary, for example, for a grade 9 was 203 marks. And for 2024, we can see it's 197 marks. And this is available on the internet if you just search up the grade boundary for your exam board. So what I want you to do is add these together. So if we add 203 plus 197, we go ahead and get 400. And if we divide this by 2 to get an average, we get 200. So what this means is that this year's prediction could be 200 marks for a grade 9. Now you can go ahead and get this value of 200, divide it by 240, which is the total marks that you can achieve. And that will let you know the percentage. So if we do 200 divided by 240, we get 83% for a grade 9. Now I'm going to start with the higher maths paper and I'm going to summarize this in the table above. Now as we can see that you need less than half marks, only 45% to get a grade 6. Now I do feel this is quite generous, so I would suggest just pausing the video here and just looking at the table so you can see if you're doing higher maths, what the grade boundaries could look like. Now as I said, for a grade 6 you need 109 marks across all 3 papers to get a grade 6. Now if you think about this, if you do 109 divided by 3, it's around 37 marks per paper. So this is less than half the marks on every paper and you will average out to get a grade 6. Now let's go ahead and do the same for foundation. So what I've done is I've summarized this for foundation maths in the table above. Feel free to pause the video here so you can have a look. So with the foundation paper, you can see is actually a much higher percentage required to get a grade 4. Now as we can see on the table, you need roughly 60% to get a pass mark. Now, as you can see on the table, as it's around 60%, it works out to be roughly 145 marks across all 3 papers to get a grade 4. Now, in previous years like June 2022, the grade boundaries were considerably lower, around 135 marks for a grade 6. But it's important to know that in these years, a lot of students did miss school, which is why the grade boundaries reflect this. And lastly, as mentioned before, this grade boundary is for Edexcel. If you do AQA or OCR, make sure you check it for your exam board so you can get an accurate prediction of what it could look like. So let's move on to English. For GCSE English language, there are 2 exam papers. Each paper is worth 80 marks, which means there's a total of 160 marks that you can achieve. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to be looking at the AQA exam board as it is the most common for GCSE. However, feel free to do the same exercise for whichever exam board you do. Now, if we get up the 2023 and 2024 grade boundaries for AQA, we can actually see they're nearly identical. I've summarized these in the table above, so feel free to pause the video here so you can have a look. Now what this suggests is a stable trend between the years, so it gives us a good prediction of what this year could look like. Now if you look at the table, around 70% is required for a grade 8 and only half the marks are required for a grade 5. Now I don't think this is too bad and I do feel like it is quite generous. So it's important to note that English doesn't have a higher or foundation tier unlike with maths, so this means that all students have to use this same grade boundary. And this is usually the reason why the English grade boundaries are slightly more generous than the maths ones, because these grade boundaries have to generalize across all students and there's no split between higher or foundation. And lastly, let's go on to science. Just before we go, if you're enjoying this video, please share with a friend and consider subscribing if you find it useful. So for science, there's a lot more going on as we have combined or triple science, but then we also have higher or foundation. So what we'll do is we'll start with combined science first, and for the sake of this video, we're going to be looking at the AQA exam board. But as mentioned before, feel free to do the same exercise for whichever exam board you're doing. So for combined science, there's 6 papers in total. 2 papers for biology, 2 papers for chemistry, and 2 papers for physics. Now, each paper is worth 70 marks, so across all 6 papers, there's a total of 420 marks that you can achieve. So once you've added the total marks you've achieved across all 6 papers, you can go ahead and look at the grade boundaries. Now, what we'll do is we'll start with Foundation Combined Science first, and because Foundation Combined Science and all Combined Science actually is 2 GCSEs, for Foundation it will go from grade 1-1 all the way to 5-5. So I've summarized this all in the table above, so feel free to pause the video here so you can have a look. Now, as we can see, for a grade 4-4, which is a pass on both sciences, you just need slightly above half marks. Now, as you can see, this is roughly around 228 marks out of 420. Now, let's get on to higher combined science. Now, for higher combined science, again, it's still 6 papers, a total of 420 marks, but it's important to know that the grades go from 9-9 all the way down to 4-3, because remember, with higher, you can't go all the way down to 1-1, and there is a minimum grade that you can get, which is a 4-3. So as you can see from the table, to get a grade 5-5 on the higher paper, all you need is 136 marks across all 6 papers. Now this works out to be 23 marks per paper roughly, which is extremely low. But it's important to know that the higher paper is more difficult than foundation, so the grade boundaries do reflect this. Also, it's important to note that around 50%, so half the marks, will land you a grade 7-7, which I do think is quite nice. Now, of course, I won't go over every grade boundary, just pause the video so you can have a look. So now let's finally go over triple science. Now, if you're doing triple science, each science, whether it's biology, chemistry, or physics, has its own grade boundary because it's treated as a separate subject rather than everything being combined together as with combined sciences. So for each subject, whether that's biology, chemistry, or physics, there are 2 papers. So for example, for biology, there's 2 papers, for chemistry, there's 2 papers, and for physics, there's 2 papers. Now, each of these papers is 100 marks each, so in total, it's 200 marks per subject. Now, what I'll do is I'll start with foundation first, and let's go over the foundation triple grade boundaries. So let's start with foundation biology. Now, I've summarized everything on the table above, so feel free to pause the video so you can have a look. But it's important to know that for foundation biology triple, you need roughly 58% for a grade 4. Now, let's go on to foundation chemistry. Again, I've put it on the table above, so feel free to pause the video. But as you can see with the table, you need roughly 55% in foundation chemistry to get a grade 4. This is slightly lower than biology because remember, a lot of students do struggle with chemistry over biology. And lastly, for foundation physics, as you can see in the table, you need roughly 60% for a grade 4. And lastly, let's go on to higher triple. So let's start with biology. Now, as you can see in the biology table, you need roughly 44% for a grade 6. Now, this is below half marks for a grade 6, which I do think is quite generous. And as you can see here on the chemistry table, it's pretty much the same thing. So feel free to pause here so you can have a look. And lastly, for physics, I've put it in the table above. And as you can see, it's roughly around half the marks, roughly 51% to go and get a grade 6. Now remember, this is all for AQA grade boundaries. So if you do a different example, just do the same thing. Now here's a quick tip. When calculating how many marks you think you got in the exam, it's always best to round your marks down or go a bit more conservative so that way you're always safe and you know if you fall within a grade boundary. So what's the takeaway? Now in this video we've covered a lot of information about different grade boundaries and a lot of different marks, but let me quickly summarize 2 key things. So firstly, we can see you don't need 100% to get a grade 9. As you can see in a lot of subjects, you can even get a grade 9 with as little as 70%. And lastly, it's important to note that every mark does count. As you can see that some grade boundaries are quite close together, and if you add up all those marks across all of your different papers, even 1 mark on each paper can make a difference to your grade. Now, how can we use this information when preparing for your results? If we base it off the predicted grade boundaries, you should roughly know what grade you got. This is because that when you do an exam paper, you should roughly know how you did, whether that means you look at the unofficial mark scheme, compare your answers with your friends, or even use your own intuition. This is useful because it allows you to plan ahead so you can know exactly which colleges and sixth forms you can apply for. And also this will help a lot with the shock and stress when it comes to results day and when you open that envelope. Of course, the real grade boundaries could be slightly different, but you can check this in the morning before picking up your results. Every year, the exam board will release the grade boundaries in the morning before results day, so usually around midnight, you can actually check what the real grade boundaries were. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful, and feel free to comment down below anything you'd like me to cover in another video. Good luck with your results.